Hey everybody, welcome to Saturday Scares with Kyle. I'm your host Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com and the Kyle and Nick on Film YouTube channel, which you're currently watching. This is our Saturday show where we talk horror, and today we are talking about the first Brazilian horror film, supposedly ever, which came out just 60 years ago with 1964's At Midnight, I'll Take Your Soul. This film is written, directed, or co-written, directed, and starring Jose Mojica Marins. And if you don't know who that is, he is a filmmaker very well known for one specific character, Coffin Joe. This is the first of a trilogy of films featuring Coffin Joe, but to be fair, this is the first actual appearance of Coffin Joe in film, which is many, many more films than just three. I know it's confusing. Stick with me. There are three films in the Coffin Joe trilogy, officially speaking. This one, followed by This Night I'll Possess Your Corpse, an Embodiment of Evil. The second film came out in 1967. The third film came out in 2008. But you might be thinking to yourself, that's a pretty big gap in Coffin Joe installments. Don't worry, he appeared multiple other times as a horror host, as a dream entity. He's considered by many to be the Brazilian Freddy Krueger, and he has a lot of appearances, and I'm sure we'll be covering those. But don't worry, the timeline is confusing. I get it. Let's just go with those films as a trilogy for now, and we'll work it out as we go through this series. So what we have here is Coffin Joe, who is an undertaker, and he has this sick, twisted belief that he can achieve immortality by having a son, a concept he calls the continuation of blood. He denounces all religion and he denounces God himself multiple times throughout the film. He is very much a demonic kind of figure, an evil figure who only seems to really cause pain to others, and that's where he derives most of his pleasure. This film, it's very much about him trying to find the perfect mate who will help him conceive the perfect continuation of his bloodline. It's a disturbing film in a number of ways. It does feature sexual assault. It features violence towards women. It features violence towards religion. It features violence towards a number of things. It's not exactly a crowd-pleasing moment. Twisters, this movie is not. But what it is it's a disturbing character study of one of the characters you find the least appealing and yet oftentimes the most interesting. Basically, Coffin Joe was created because of a nightmare that its director Jose Mojica Marins had, where he was dreaming of himself being lowered into a plot in the ground by a black-clad version of himself, and you can see that he wears the top hat in the film. He also has the elongated fingers, which actually Marins had elongated thumbnails. And rumor has it he wasn't originally the plan to be the lead actor, but the lead actor dropped out. He took over, and he had prosthetically placed on long fingernails to kind of make the whole thing work. And in a lot of ways, it is kind of indicative of Freddy Krueger in that he's got these like knife fingers in some ways as well. So that idea coming 20 years before Freddy Krueger is rather captivating in my mind. The film was deemed fairly political, although I will say I don't know if I entirely buy it, because a lot of the things that are connected politically speaking with the character of Coffin Joe in this film do seem to be, I don't know, a little far-fetched connections to me. I mean, everything is politically under the surface, but I don't know that Marins is going for that in the film. But you can look at his imposing nature as kind of the dangers of governmental control, which was something that they were going through at the time. I don't really buy that. I buy that he was an evil, sick individual who I think Marins was looking for one of the most nightmarish people he could create, and I think he did create that. The director was actually known for threatening violence on his crew. This is not meant to be something where I'm like holding him up on a pedestal. I don't. Apparently, there was a sequence where they wanted to shoot, but there was not enough sunlight, and so he held a gun to his crew and told them they were shooting anyway. He claims it was a prop later on, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the background of this film was very, very fun to be on for. Thankfully, it was shot only in 13 days, so they probably didn't have to spend too much time working with Marins. But what we have here is we have a character study, and it's a fairly short movie that is kind of episodic in some ways. I mean, he lusts after the female friend of his buddy and decides to take his buddy out in order to get to her, and then realizes she doesn't want him, so he takes advantage of her. It's dark, it's depressing, it's weird. I think its style maybe uplifts the film from, say, maybe something a bit more on the depressing side, like the previously talked about Whirlpool. like it has a lot in common with those kinds of rape revenge films, assault films that take place. This one doesn't really have a solid ending for the victims, but what it does do is it kind of does feature a lot of Coffin Joe's enemies rising up against him, psychologically speaking. The finale of this film is incredible. This kind of the past has come back to haunt you, Coffin Joe. It really is a great sequence of like horror where he is kind of overtaken by these visions he's had of all the horrible things he's done. And I think that's maybe what Mearns is going for in a lot of ways too, is that our past comes back to find us. Our past is not done with us, even if we think that we are impenetrable. And I think that's maybe what I felt he was going for with this film, and you can see that through that finale sequence, which occurs maybe a little too late in the film because it does kind of linger on these disturbing, disgusting qualities for so long that when that finale happened, it kind of kick-started me. It gave me a second wind or maybe a third wind in the film where I was like re-engaged in it, but I was kind of like losing that intentional connection with the film as it went on just because of how hard it went through all those sequences. So it's not an easy movie to watch, but I think stylistically speaking, Mearns adds a lot of flair to the film, especially on such a low budget. This movie does feel like there's intention behind a lot of it, and the atmosphere is there, the palpability of what's going on is there, and it's quite an engaging little film, even though it's kind of a little too harsh for me to tell everyone go out and watch the Coffin Joe films, but it's nice to see one that also goes pretty harsh and features those dark remnants coming back to haunt him. And I'm curious to see what happens next time we see Coffin Joe. So maybe you have to join me for that very soon. We'll talk more about Coffin Joe in the near future. I can almost certainly guarantee you of that. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Saturday Scares with Kyle. Again, go down to the comments section. Let me know your thoughts on Coffin Joe, this trilogy, or this film in general. I'd love to hear about it. My favorite thing to do is engage with the fans of this show. Check it out down in the comment section. While you're down there, like and subscribe. They're 2 free things you can do that helps to support the channel, and you'll never miss new episodes of Saturday Scares with Kyle or Kyle and Nick on Film. Thank you for joining me for this. You can find all of my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com. We're getting closer and closer to that 31 Days of Horror season. Don't worry, everybody. I know people are wondering whether or not 31 Days of Horror is coming back. It will be back this year. It will be back in full force. I'm not giving up on that. No, it's definitely coming back. So thank you so much for joining us. Join us next time on Saturday Scares with Kyle as we talk about the superhero and what happens if he's bad. We're going to talk about Brightburn, the Superman origin story you didn't expect, next time. Join us for that.